Welcome to the BluStar Application Server, or BAS, deployment and installation tutorial. The Astra BluStar Application Server HD video solution includes a server, the 8000i desktop terminals, and mobile clients for iPhone, iPad, and PC. In this tutorial, we'll cover the following topics. I'll go over a checklist of what you'll receive when your BluStar application server arrives and how to connect the various cables to the server. We'll power up the BluStar application server, and I'll take you through a step-by-step procedure on how to use the initial console mode to pre-configure and install the BluStar application server software. Once the BluStar application server software is installed and running, I'll give you an introduction to the menu bar. In the user account section, I'll demonstrate how to add 3 user accounts and explain various fields. The last part of the tutorial will be to configure the 8000i terminals so they will work with the BluStar application server. And finally, we'll use the directory to make a call. When you order a BluStar application server, or BAS, I'll refer to the server hardware and software as a BAS throughout this tutorial. You will get a basic rail kit, a bracket kit, a server, a power cord, a front panel cover with lock and key, a quick start guide, and information specific to your server. Before you power up the BAS, you will need to connect a VGA monitor, an Ethernet connection. Be sure to connect the cable to Ethernet 0. It's labeled ETH0. Later, you can configure Ethernet 1 for various uses, such as to communicate with a select group of devices on a separate network. Connect a USB keyboard and the power cable. On the front of the BAS, you will see a flashing green light indicating power has been connected to the BAS. Push the power button to power up the BAS. The BAS will arrive with the operating system, Linux, pre-installed, and the BAS installation software is preloaded, meaning the BAS installation software has been copied to the hard drive. We'll run and install the BAS installation software a little later in the lesson. Using the monitor directly connected to the VGA port on the back of the server is referred to as console mode. That's what we'll be using in this lesson. After we use the console to perform the basic configuration, we'll move on to the web user interface, where we'll add our license and create 3 user accounts. After about a minute, the BAS will boot up and display the login prompt. The default login is root, and the password is BluStar, all lowercase. We're now logged in. The next thing we want to do is to open the BAS configuration interface. To do this, we'll type the following command: /vconfig, no spaces, and then press the Enter key. The first screen, Welcome to BluStar, will give you the instructions on how to use the configuration interface. To modify a setting, highlight it using the arrow keys, then press Enter. When modifying settings, type the desired value or use the Tab key or space bar to select an option. Use the Escape key to go back 1 level or to quit without saving. I'll press the Enter key to continue. This will open the main menu. We'll go through each menu and work our way down. I'll arrow down to Network Configuration and press the Enter key. Here, you will select how the server will be configured. Your choices are a single standalone node, redundant nodes to provide high availability. These are set up as master or slave nodes, and rebuild server, used to replace an existing high availability node. For this training video, I'll select single node and press Enter. I'll use the up and down arrow keys on the keyboard to navigate and highlight each field. I'll press the Enter key once to allow editing. I'll enter the desired information and press the Enter key a second time to accept. I'll repeat this process for each field. The first field I need to edit is primary address, so I'll arrow down to primary IP address and press the Enter key. I'll type a static IP address that I'm assigning to Ethernet port 0. This IP address will most likely be determined and reserved by your IT department or network administrator. After I enter the IP address, I'll press the Enter key to accept. The next field is Primary Net Mask. For this example, I'll use the default. So I'll continue and arrow down to Host Name. If assigned, again by your IT department or network administrator, you would enter in the name of the server in the fully qualified form. For this example, I'll type bastraining.us.astra.com. I'll arrow down to Primary Name Server and enter this information. This is the primary DNS server of your network, and if applicable, type the secondary name server information. Arrow down and enter the default gateway information. This is the gateway for the primary IP address we assign to this server. Optionally, you can enter in an IP address of a time server. The 8000i terminals synchronize time with the BAS. This option allows you to configure the server to synchronize its time with another server or an external time server. I'll arrow down and highlight Apply Configuration and press the Enter key. The BAS applies the current configuration that we just entered. I'll press the Enter key to continue. I'll arrow down to Network Connectivity Test and press the Enter key. Here, it will run a set of tests where it will ping the gateway, the primary and secondary name servers. The tests are all successful, so we'll move on. Time Setup lets us change the time and date if necessary. Next, we'll go into SSL certificate generation. The BluStar Manager sets up its own self-signed certificates by default. The BluStar 8000i terminals, however, require certification authority-signed certificates. I'll edit the information in the certificate. The common name field will automatically be generated based upon the information we previously entered in the network configuration. Once the certificate is generated, it is stored locally. As terminals and devices connect, it will pass the certificate along. The terminals and devices will then use the certificate to communicate with the BAS. When you are finished, highlight Generate Certificate and press the Enter key. The next screen will state that we have successfully created a certificate. Press the Enter key twice to continue. The next menu is Software Installation. The BAS installation software has been copied onto the hard drive. This step will install the BAS software and use the information we entered from the previous menus. I'll press the Enter key twice to begin and confirm the installation process. The next screen brings up the Astra End User Software License. Press the Enter key when you are finished reading. The next screen brings up the third-party software and licensing information. Press the Enter key when you are finished reading. After you have read the license agreement and accept all terms, conditions, and restrictions, type Yes in the box to continue. On the next screen, you will enter in a new password for the root user. The old password was BluStar. The password does not display as you type it. For my password, I'll enter console123. Press the Enter key to accept. Then re-enter your password. Press the Enter key to accept, and it launches the BluStar application software installation. When the installation is complete, you will see the message, "This server must be rebooted to start functioning. Do you want to reboot now?" Type the letter Y and press the Enter key to reboot. In preparation for the reboot, you may see a red failed message. This is normal as the system attempts to shut down various services. After the server reboots, notice the server name that we input in the network configuration menu is now being displayed. At this point, the server is now functional. We are done using the console and ready to begin using the BAS Web User Interface. Using a computer that is on the same network as the BAS or has access to the BAS, open a web browser and type https:// and the host name or the IP address you assign to the BAS. The IP address I assigned to my BAS was 10.70.109.210. Then press the Enter key. You may receive a warning screen. If you do, select Continue to this website. This brings us to the login screen. Remember, this login is for the BAS Web UI. We'll log in with the username admin. And the default password for the admin account is BluStar, all lowercase. The role drop-down list allows the user to select the permission level they want to log in with. Web Platform Admin is the highest permission level, and Web Terminal User is the lowest permission level. This is used to choose the level of expertise based upon the individual's function. I'll select Default, which will log in with the highest permission level or role available for this user. For the admin user, the default role is Web Platform Admin. The domain is the domain name or server name of the BAS. When I'm finished, I'll click on the Login User button. The first time you log in, you'll have to change the password. Type in the new password and confirm it. I'll enter Web UI 123. Then click on the Login User button. The menu bar is the main launching point for all of the administration web pages. The navigation bar. When the user selects an option from the menu bar or submenu, the navigation bar changes, adding a link to the chosen menu or submenu. This allows the user to jump back up the menu tree to a previous menu option. You may have also heard of these referred to as a breadcrumb trail. The main functional area displays one of the following: the welcome screen, a submenu, or a form. The informational area provides information about the product the user interface is managing, the version of the product, the name of the currently logged in user, as well as the role the current user is logged in with. There are 7 options in the top menu bar. Depending on the role that you are logged in as, will determine how many of these options you will see. For example, logging in with the role set to Web Platform Admin allows me to see all 7 options. If I logged in with the role set to Web Terminal User, the My BluStar would be the only option I would see. Now let's take a closer look at each option in the menu bar. The first option is My BluStar. This is where you can change the user password and download software, such as the BluStar sharing client. The next option is Users. After the installation, the default administrator account is automatically created with the username of admin and a password of BluStar. In this option as an administrator, I can manage user accounts. I can view, edit, add, and delete user accounts. I can also set up rules for a group. We will come back to this option and build 3 users a little later in the training. In the BluStar Devices option, you can obtain information about the BluStar devices or configure BluStar devices. An example of BluStar devices are the 8000i BluStar terminals, a video server, and audio mixers. All of these devices are managed from this area. The Services option provides the ability to configure high-level functions of the application server not accessible from the command line interface. Except for licensing, we don't need to go into these settings for a basic install. However, you can find additional information regarding these settings in the admin guide. So let's talk about licensing. The number of connected users is limited by the number of licenses for a BAS. There can be up to 1,000 users connected to a singular BAS at any given time. A 5-user license is enabled by default to provide the functionality during the installation and configuration. This prohibits more than 5 devices from participating in the BluStar network until valid licenses are installed. So let me demonstrate how to install a 15-user license so that we can see what it looks like. I'll click on the Install Licenses. Then I'll click on the Browse button and navigate to the location where I have stored the license file. I'll select and open the file. Then I'll click on the Upload License button to install the license on the server. Now let's view the license we just installed. The View Licenses page lists various product licenses installed on the server. The listing indicates the product, major and minor version number, number of users supported by the license, and the status of the license, for example, valid, invalid, or expired. The Platform option provides the functionality for managing the BAS platform, including viewing logs, enabling automatic monitoring of the server, defining static routes, and viewing system information. Again, we don't need to go into these settings for the basic install. You can also find additional information regarding these settings in the admin guide. The last option is Tools. This section is used for debugging and is not to be used without assistance from a support representative, with the possible exception of location lookup. So that was an introduction to the options in the menu bar. In this section, I will add 3 users. From the menu bar, click on Users, then click on User Accounts. This screen displays a list of all configured user accounts. You can see the admin account that was created during the installation process. To add another user, I'll click on the Add button, which will bring up a form that I will fill out for my new user. Notice the red asterisks. This indicates mandatory fields. This account is for Mike Murphy. The first field I'll fill in is username. This is the name that Mike will use when he logs in. For this example, I'll enter M. Murphy. For the display name, I'll enter Mike Murphy. In the SIP name URL, I'll replace the left arrow, name, and right arrow with the username M. Murphy. I'll scroll down to see a panel of 5 buttons. The first button is Contact Details. In the Address Book section, I will fill in the first and last name. You can also enter in other personal information, such as a phone number, addresses, organization, email, or a website. Check the Save Global Address Book checkbox. This will save and use the information to populate the directory, which BluStar users will use to locate and call another user. The next button in the panel is Groups. Groups can be used to set up a number of common rules or settings. This section allows you to add the user or remove the user from a group. By assigning a user to a group, they will inherit those settings. This will streamline the process and eliminate the need to set up common settings over and over for each user. I'll show you an example of the group functions when I get to password restraints. The Security button is used to set the user's password. Enter the admin password first, then enter the new user password and confirm it. You have the option to force the user to change their password on the first login. I'm going to uncheck this box so they won't have to change their password when they log in. You can also set the allowed login roles. The default is set up for end users, and the allow admin roles are not checked. Under password restraints are predefined defaults, whether they are inherited and which group they are inherited from. In this case, the all users group. This is an example of the groups function I mentioned earlier. If I change the default, for example, if I change the minimum password length from 6 to 8, watch the inherited checkbox become unchecked, indicating the initial default value has been changed. So I'll continue on to the next button, Password Expiry. Here I can set the maximum number of days the current password is valid before requiring the user to change it. Entering 0 in this field will set the password to never expire. The password history sets the number of previous passwords that are remembered by the system. New passwords cannot match any of the passwords in the history. Under the Account Lock button, I can set the number of invalid login attempts before the system automatically locks the account. The default is 4 times. And the next field sets how long the system will lock the account. The time is set in minutes, so the default is 1 minute. The last button, Access Control, sets whether you can edit call handling rules, execute remote control commands, configure lapd directory, or configure Exchange Personal Contact. So that was a look at the Security Panel button. For this tutorial, I'm not going to go into proxy registration or voicemail. When I'm finished, I'll click on the Save button, and then click on the Back to User Filter button. So that completes the setup for Mike Murphy. From the User Account menu, I can search for a user by entering the first few letters of their name. I can select a user by clicking on the box to the left of their name. When they are selected, a check mark appears. Then I can view or edit the user settings, or I can delete the user account. I can also click on the double right arrows, which will take me directly to the Records Editing page. Because this is a tutorial, I went into many of the settings so that you could see areas that could be modified. But for most end-user accounts that you create, you can add them very quickly. Let me demonstrate with the next two user accounts for Robert Ramsey and Don Warner. I'll click Add. Then I'll enter the username. Now here's a tip. Click on the Save button and watch the display name and SIP URL. They get pre-populated. Then I'll edit a couple of letters in the display name. I'll scroll down to Contact Name, fill in the first and last name. I'll click on the Security button and add a password. And uncheck the Force Password checkbox. At this point, I'm going to use the rest of the inherited settings from the All Users group. So I'll click on the Save button to create the user account. Then I'll click on the Back to User Filter button. I'll repeat the process for Don Warner. Once a user account is created, the same username and password can be used to log into all devices for that user. This would include the 8000i desktop terminal and mobile clients for iPhone, iPad, and PC. All at the same time, all with the same username and password. Keep in mind that each device registration or login consumes a license. I have now created 3 user accounts. On the BluStar 8000i terminals, plug in the Ethernet cable and the power cable. Once they have booted up, I will touch the Accept button to accept the Astra End User Software License, and it will bring me to the Terminal Identity screen. On the left side of the screen, by default, DHCP is selected. I can keep this setting and the IP addresses that were automatically assigned, or I can uncheck the Use DHCP box and change to a static IP address. For this tutorial, I'll keep the DHCP settings. On the right side of the screen, touch the field next to Terminal Name and enter the terminal name. I'll name this terminal US Dallas Terminal 1. Then I'll press the Advanced button. In the Server Type field, BluStar Application Server is selected, which is what I want. The next field is BluStar Application Server. I'll need to enter the domain name or the IP address for the BluStar Application Server. For this example, I'll enter the IP address and touch the Back button. Then I'll press the Done button in the upper right corner. I'll touch the Restart button to reboot with the new settings. I'll repeat this process for each device. The 8000i terminal has rebooted. At this point, I'm ready to log in. I'll enter the username and password on each BluStar 8000i terminal. Remember, in the user options, I created 3 user accounts: Mike Murphy, Robert Ramsey, and Don Warner. Then I'll go to the directory and I'll select the user I want to call. In this series of training, I showed you how to connect your BluStar application server, configure the installation software, create 3 user accounts, set up your 8000i terminals, and make a call. This concludes this training on the BluStar application server Admin 1 Basic Installation.